and welcome. Happy Pride Month. Welcome to Bison Roundtable. I'm Tamia Webster. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Associate Director for Alumni Engagement here at Howard University. Our Bison community is very excited to hear and watch this intergenerational conversation that's going to happen with our LGBTQ plus community here at Howard. I'm going to turn it over to Jose Cadiz. He is the Assistant Director of the Intercultural Center here at Howard University. And thank you all so much for being here today.
Hello, everyone. Our Bison family, happy Pride Month. I want to thank you all for joining us today. Continue to be grateful in our spirits, allow you into our homes as we have an amazing discussion with some great change agents at Howard University, our LGBTQ plus activists, our current and past students, some founders of different organizations that have paved the way over the times of hardship, of happy times, of tears, of laughter. And I want to thank you all for being here. My name, as Tamia mentioned, is Mr. Jose Cadiz. I use he, him pronouns, and I am the Assistant Director of the Intercultural Affairs and LGBTQ plus Resource Center at Howard University. I have amazing panelists today that will discuss their experience at Howard University, as well as their leadership in different organizations on campus. First, I have the distinct honor to introducing you to Chai Hughes. Chai Hughes is the co-founder of the Lambda Student Alliance, the precursor to CASCADE. For over 40 years, Chai has been a champion of health and wellness on behalf of the LGBTQ plus communities. In 2015, Chai received the Community Pioneer Award from the Rainbow History Project. Welcome, Chai. Next, I have Amari Ice, he, him pronouns. Amari Ice is a gay love coach, matchmaker, and hypnotherapist who helps single men master their romantic magic. He's the founding president of CASCADE in its current form and currently serves as the president of the HU Rainbow Alumni Association. Welcome, Mr. Ice. Next, we have Lacey Johnson. Lacey, I've had the distinct honor of working with personally, is a Howard alumnus who graduated in the spring of 2022 with a BA in sociology with a minor in English. He worked with CASCADE from his sophomore year, serving as historian, both sophomore and junior year. Their senior year, Lacey served as president. This fall, they will be beginning their studies at the University of Maryland, College Park, in pursuit of their master's in library and information science. Next, we have Laten Jordan. Laten is a senior honors political science major, strategic communications minor from Columbus, Ohio. His pronouns are he, him, his, and he has been an active member with CASCADE for the past 2 years and now serves as the 2022-2023 president. Congratulations and welcome all of our panelists. So first and foremost, I want to thank you all for joining us today in this important conversation during Pride Month here at Howard University. We are excited and we thank the Division of Alumni Relations for hosting us at this Bison Roundtable. So the first question that I have, I want to pose this question to our, in its current state, CASCADE, our founding president, Mr. Amari Ice. And that is, how did you come into CASCADE leadership? And how did you change that into what it is currently in its current state?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So when I got to Howard, the organization for LGBT students was called BLGOSA, which stands for the Bisexual, Lesbian, and Gay Organization of Students at Howard. And I think at the end of my freshman year, I started to go to the different meetings and the events that they had, and it was pretty cool. But there was a piece of the experience at Howard as a gay student that I felt like was missing. and then also wasn't necessarily being represented in the meetings, right? So for me, I came out pretty much before I even got to Howard. I was out from day one. I lived in, at the time, Carver Hall, which was an all-male dorm, and had a ball, like time of my life. It was so much fun, so much camaraderie, so much connection. But the way that I saw other students' experiences on campus didn't really align with what my experience was like. And so I really wanted to influence that and make some different changes and create opportunities for people to really have the, let's say, access to power, right? Access to recognizing that we really do have a responsibility to create the world, the campus, the life that we want to see. So I got involved then at, I think this was like 2007. So many moons ago. And ended up becoming president unintentionally. I didn't want to be president. I wanted to be over like chapter activities and events and membership because I'm really good at like recruitment and ideas and all of that. But lo and behold, we had to have a president of the organization, and the rest of the e-board voted me to become president. So that's how I came into leadership. It was like by default, we need you to do it. So I stepped up to the plate and did it. At the end of my first year as president of Blagosa, I pretty much was seized with this vision of a new organization, which I named CASCADE. And my intention wasn't to change Blagosa into CASCADE. It was to have two LGBT organizations on campus. But lo and behold, the membership of the organization brought up the vote to actually just rename the organization because no one wanted to take it over in its then current form. So that's how the shift happened. I was ready to do something totally new and start partnering, but they were like, nah, let's just rebrand, infuse the organization with new life. And so that's how it happened. So 2009 was the first year of CASCADE in its current iteration. And that's how I came into leadership and how the baby of mine was born. And it's really cool to see that the organization is still alive and thriving as is. And just for a little context, Blagosa was founded in 2000 by Sterling Washington. And then in 2009 is when we had the reframe to CASCADE. So nonstop since 2000 for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it continues to thrive today. And we have two amazing members of the organization, one of which just graduated. And we have our current president of CASCADE today. I want to go to Lacey really quickly. So Lacey, you were the historian your sophomore and junior year, and your senior year, you were president of CASCADE. So what did CASCADE mean to you as a LGBTQ plus queer student on campus? And let's backtrack there, because CASCADE is an acronym. So let's go ahead and break that down as well. What does CASCADE mean? And then what did it mean to you while your time at Howard?
Sure, thank you so much for the introduction. I'm really excited to be here. So yeah, to start, CASCADE stands for the Coalition of Activist Students Celebrating the Acceptance of Diversity and Equality. And I'm sure that the vision that we've had for it in the past few years, or probably every 4 years, kind of turns over. But I think that my impression of it was always that our responsibility and voice was directly tied to the students first, So as activists, we were looking out for, the student population, the LGBT population, and staff, faculty, graduate students. So our first loyalties were always to, the kids, as So that's kind of how I always saw it, was definitely centering the work we did in activism and thinking of it as that kind of organizing aspect versus, a department of the university or, something like that. And for me, coming into CASCADE, pretty much when I showed up on campus, I was looking for, queer friendship and community. And like freshman week, they actually hosted a few events and I was able to go, and I actually met a lot of cool people. One person who's my roommate today currently. So pretty quickly, I was like, this is a cool organization. I'm interested in what they're doing. I met some of the leadership too, especially with like the freshman week events being smaller. It was a little more intimate. So we were able to all kind of talk and meet. And over the course of my freshman year, I was kind of sporadically involved, as the semester went on and the year went on, things got busy, and freshmen, I think we always underestimate how hard college is going to be. But by the end of my freshman year, I think a few friends of mine and we saw a flyer about the interest meeting for e-board applications. And we're just like, okay, like, let's go, let's see what that's about. And by the end of the meeting, I was convinced to apply. I didn't intend to apply before that. I hadn't really thought about it much. I was involved in leadership in like high school and middle school a bit, but it wasn't really something I was set on continuing. But yeah, by the end of the meeting, I was convinced to apply. The historian was a position that had been lapsed for a few years, so it wasn't like fully new, but there wasn't really a blueprint for it before. And that was the one I was really interested in. Of course, now going into libraries and archives, it makes a lot of sense. But back then I was just pretty interested in the concept of it and doing something new and making it our own. And over the course of my sophomore year and my junior year, I really fell into the organization and really dedicated so much time and energy towards it that by my senior year, I really did feel ready to kind of take on more and to lead in that way. So I did run for president and was elected. And senior year was such a journey. And I feel like I learned so much and grew so much as a leader in that year. But looking back, even in the hardest moments, I think I always would reflect to myself and think that, what I'm doing is for the students, So that was always, I think, what grounded me, the days when I had class and work and, the things that as students have so much going on. I felt always grounded in that kind of activist mindset of, if we don't do it, nobody is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that. And Laten, I want to bring you into the conversation here. You were Vice President of External Affairs last year, and incoming this year, you are the President of CASCADE. Well, talk a little bit about prior to you, to last year when we were fully on campus, we went through a pandemic. How was that being, part of the LGBTQ plus community, having the resources and support from a distance, not really being on campus, but from, a virtual space? Was there a space for CASCADE to cultivate those connections? And tell me how CASCADE did that.
Yes, thank you for that question and introduction. So actually my sophomore year when the pandemic began, I entered CASCADE as their outreach coordinator under the current Vice President of External Affairs, Michael Franklin, who was also the Hughes Vice President at the time. So my sophomore year was really about finding different ways to bridge the gap between the student body, because we were virtual. I was also in COAS Council as a director position. So using both organizations as a way to really advocate and leverage one another to impact the queer community. So one of my very first events that I had the opportunity to execute and to kind of spearhead was with the LGBT Congressional Staff Association. And it was virtual, it was in the fall, and we just had a great conversation with staffers on Capitol Hill, just about queerness and politics and how queer students at Howard can get involved in the resources that were there. So even though it was a pandemic, we were virtual, we weren't in person, we were still connected. And through my role as outreach coordinator, just connecting with external organizations to continue to bridge that gap for the queer community.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. So Amari, I want to come back to you. Your experience on Howard's campus, as you mentioned, 2007, in that era, I was also in college around that time, so I know exactly what the atmosphere was. That was when we started to have those conversations surrounding queer students and how to support queer students on campus, our LGBTQ plus community. One of my first federal work study jobs was in the LGBTQ plus resource center, but at a PWI. We have come a very long way. We have tons of experiences where HBCUs are now looking at supporting our queer students on campus, our LGBTQ plus students on campus. Tell me what that importance of having LGBTQ plus resource centers and support and resources on campus means, and what the difference would have been if there was a resource center while you were at Howard.
Yeah, that's a really awesome question. And what's so cool about this is when I came into leadership of the organization, this was one of our primary objectives, to create an LGBT resource center. And it's so cool that it only took 10 years, but we're here. So I'm just like through the moon that throughout the years, we were able to keep this effort going, and the university has actually adapted to the needs of its students, and it exists now. So it's just a huge kudos to everyone who's been a part of the process to make it happen, to birth it, and also you and your team that's actually carrying it out. Like, I'm just goosebumps over here, right? The importance of a LGBT resource center is multifold. So on the one hand, for students to feel safe, accepted, seen, acknowledged, heard, welcomed, right? Like very, very clear, very self-explanatory, like we need this in order for that sense of self-reflection to be present, right? We all understand the importance of representation, and to have an LGBT resource center on our campus is one of those primary centers that says, not only are you represented, but you're accepted here. And so that acceptance, which is built into the CASCADE name, was so paramount for me. It's not about tolerating, our presence, or, kind of just lackadaisically ignoring the fact that we're here. No, it's like the celebration of acceptance and diversity, because it's here. It's not ever going to not be here. And an LGBT center is going to really encapsulate that in not just the presence of its students, but the ideology of the university that says, if you are also a student here, whether you're LGBTQ plus or not, this is who we are, and this is what it's given. And that's just that. And so the other piece of this, though, is for those of us who aren't necessarily LGBT, who haven't been exposed to names and terminology and the culture of what it means to be a part of our community. So to have that exposure in a way that is digestible, researchable, accessible for other students, it also goes a long way to spreading that level of safety and acceptance throughout our culture, throughout our world. Because let's face it, Howard is the Mecca. We're in everything, we're everywhere. We are on the cutting edge, the leading edge of so many different fields and industries. And so anyone who comes through the Howard family, to have that sense of acknowledgement, acceptance of people who are LGBTQ plus, like it goes a long way to not just shifting what the campus climate is, but literally the climate of the entire world. So for me, it was a multifaceted intention that is now in fruition, and it's given.
Yeah.
And we here. So yeah.
Yes. I love it. And I want to bring in Ms. Hughes to the conversation. Ms. Chai Hughes, I want to thank you so much for being here. It's truly an honor to see such great individuals, pioneering and change agents, really committed to the work when the work wasn't easy. And that right there, it says a lot to a person's character and a person's grit, especially in a space where there could be so much pain and hurt and anxiety when we didn't know what anxiety was, and I didn't identify it, right? So now we're in a different space where, I'm so privileged to have you on this call, and I want to bring you into the conversation and share your thoughts and experiences while you were at Howard, and what drove you, what gave you the sense of, I need to do this, and it's bigger than just me.
Thank you for bringing me into the conversation. We had a few technical difficulties, but I'm back. So, we're talking about the 70s. And being on campus, I wanted to go to Howard. I wanted to go to this institution that was forward thinking about Blackness. And I did not know that as a gay person, I would not be included. So it was just a matter of looking around and seeing so many of us there. I'd see us in the clubs. I'd see us lined up on the fine arts building, chatting, having a good time. But we would ignore each other otherwise. We would, it was sort of like this silent recognition. And it was lonely. It did feel very lonely. And I thought, my God, we're here, we're queer. Why don't we get together? It wasn't easy. Those of you all who know the history probably know that we had to threaten a lawsuit to get a charter. The thinking behind that was our funds are going to support all these other organizations. Why shouldn't we have an organization? And the beauty of doing it was that we found our allies. Had we stayed in the closet, had we continued to just walk by each other and not acknowledge that we were there, we would not have been able to form community and get the support and the love on each other, pour into each other, all of that, had we not organized. We were called, they said that we were the spoke in the wheel of genocide as queers. We went through a lot, but it's the thing of taking lemons and making lemonade. I am so thrilled to see all of you here today. And as they say, standing on the shoulders, I stood on someone else's shoulders. It was so important for me to see a Black lesbian. She didn't go to Howard, but it was an older woman. Her name escapes me right now. Mabel Hampton, I think her name was. And to know that she existed and she was accessible, she was out there, gave me power, gave me confidence. And we just all got together and we said, we're going to do this thing. We're going to do it. I had some wonderful individuals who co-founded the organization as well. And here we are, here you are.
Yeah, thank you for that. That is amazing, amazing gems that you are dropping in. And we want to thank you for paving the way and standing on giants, standing on the shoulders of giants as we are standing on the shoulders of giants as well. I want to bring in, you mentioned quite a few things that I want to touch on, representation within the student body, representation within the staff, and representation within the faculty at Howard University. And I also want to touch on allyship. So Lacey, if you can just jump in really quickly and talk about the importance of representation and also the importance of allyship.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that it became so clear, I think, throughout my schooling. I was pretty lucky in that I avoided most kind of, homophobia or transphobia from students. I was just lucky in that way. I know a lot of people, my year or younger haven't been so lucky, but that's just how I went through Howard. But one thing that I do think that I was really missing was that kind of allyship from the faculty and staff. I think that CASCADE was always a little isolated in that we kind of had, the advisor we had before Mr. Cadiz's time, before Mr. Ward's time, was pretty much the only kind of ally we had. Faculty don't come to our events. Faculty and staff, they don't attend or even really talk or ask about us as far as I've experienced. And to me, that's the bigger disappointment because, as you said, Mr. Cadiz, it's so important to have that kind of camaraderie and allyship, even to know what professors are safe, it's hard to know. Even when I was just thinking, this is something that kind of came back to me when I was applying for graduate school and thinking about who I wanted to write my letters. I kind of was debating with myself, if or how or who I wanted to tell my correct pronouns to write in my letters, because, that's a consideration. I wanted them all to be uniform, but not everyone who I felt like I had a good relationship with to write my letters was necessarily someone who I was sure would accept, the requirements I wanted to have. But, with peers, I think students, of course, I think are more forward thinking in that way and willing to be allies and to listen, but it's still really not where it should be. Even other students in other organizations or student government, or even just peers who aren't necessarily involved in that way, don't really have the knowledge or even desire sometimes to kind of bring us into the conversation outside of Pride Month or, one event about being LGBT in this certain industry or something like that. So I would really love to see, and I have seen it more with your entry into Howard for sure, Mr. Cadiz, just bringing more people in, because I think some people just genuinely don't know, which is one thing, but I think, we need to not accept ignorance as an excuse at this point.
Thank you for that, Laten. And you mentioned Mr. Ward. Mr. Jaquan Ward is the program coordinator for Intercultural Affairs in the LGBTQ plus Resource Center. So I want to shout out my second hand and thank him for all the things that he does on the scene and behind the scenes as well. And Laten, I want to come back to you. You and I have met quite a few times in your position as the Vice President of External Affairs last semester, but also in your incoming time as President of CASCADE. You have sent me quite a few emails, lengthy emails about things that you want to see and change at the university. And I am so excited. I am extremely excited to have someone so passionate moving into, summertime. And when I was in college, it was like, okay, I need to take a break. I need to move all of my hats to the side. But that's not where you want to be. And I'm so excited to have you and work with you this semester. Tell us a little bit about what you want to see moving forward into the semester and into the fall and spring semester for Cascade and for the, quite frankly, Howard University at large.
Yes, it goes really back to what Lacey was talking about in terms of allyship. Cascade has been around for a long time in many different iterations, and we've consistently done the work and we will continue to do the work, but we can't really do the work alone. And it goes back to allies, where if queer students are the only ones showing up to our events, it decreases participation and engagement from our community, because it's like, we're here, we've been here, we know each other, we recognize each other, but now it's time for different organizations, whether it's students, external organizations, administration, etc., to really show up for us the way we have been showing up for us, and the way we even show up for the student body at large, whether it's queer students or not. We advocate in different ways that really impacts the entire Howard community. So I would really hope that throughout this year, I can work with different organizations and talk with administration to increase allyship and just to ensure that everybody is showing up.
Awesome, thank you. And I'm gonna also, open that question up. What are some things that you were able to do during your time at Howard that really cultivated and streamlined either some knowledge, some education, because I think that's what it boils down to, right? Out of the LGBTQ plus Resource Center, we want to make sure that it's an inclusive environment for allies as well. So safe zone trainings, cultural competency trainings, LGBTQ plus sensitivity trainings, not just for students, but for staff and faculty as well. And we're working really closely with campus partners. We've been working with the Division of Alumni Relations. We've been working with Title IX. Obviously, there's been quite extensive communication with HU Communications. You have seen the campaign that has gone out this month, highlighting our pride and our LGBTQ plus community on campus. What does that mean? What does that look like? Collaboration while you were here, but also moving forward. What are some things that you would say are, important to collaborate on in terms of moving Howard forward,
I think that's a great question because we have to be inclusive. We want people to include us. We have to be inclusive of other issues. Are we in the conversations about abortion rights? Are we in the conversations about aging? Are we in other conversations? One of the most attended event that we had was when we invited June Dobbs-Butts, who was a sex therapist, to come on campus and talk about sexuality, period, across the board. So students could come and say they were doing research for their class, or they didn't have to come out, they didn't have to, be supportive, but they wanted to know about sexuality. And the one thing that I remember she closed by saying, and she was not of the community, but she was an ally, and she closed by saying, "Don't die wondering." And it's, we have to, I think, not take ourselves so seriously and be monofocal in our desire to be just beneficial people on the planet. We have to get beyond LGBTQ issues and know that we are part of a larger community.
Absolutely. Anyone else want to jump into that question?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So you asked two versions of this. What were some of the things that we did that created connection throughout campus, throughout the community, but also what still needs to happen in order to expand that? And so a few of the things that we did under my tenure, we had some flagship events that were always like well attended. We kept them going for years. I don't know if they still happen, but one of those events was Gay and Greek. And so we had representation from each of the Divine Nine organizations and other organizations that weren't necessarily Divine Nine, like the music fraternities. I think we had AFIQ, like a few other organizations too, but we talked about what it meant to be a part of the LGBT community and also a part of the Greek community. So that intersectionality is so important. And as Chai was alluding to, it's recognizing that, yes, we are LGBTQ people, but we are also so many other things, and that each of our intersections is an opportunity to bridge connection with other people who might share the other part of us, but not the LGBTQ part of us, right? Another really well-attended event was sexuality and spirituality. And so we had people from all different faiths, like LGBTQ imams, from the Muslim faith. We had a Quaker, we had a Christian pastor, we had pretty much, I think there were like 7 or 8 different faith bases. And I think we also had an atheist as well. But that event, always one of my favorites, because for so many of us, religion has created issues or a sense of feeling like there's something wrong with us, not good enough, not lovable enough, not godly enough, whatever it may be. And so that event was so cool to have because we talked about sexuality through the lens of multiple different faith bases. And also, yeah, so it was a pretty awesome event. I can just talk about it forever. But the point of the share, though, is looking at all the different parts of ourselves, all the different things that we are, and finding those partnerships. Now, to be fair, every organization isn't necessarily, or may or may not be, open to doing an event that is specifically LGBT focused, right? Like we did Gay and Greek. However, the relationships that we build with people. So for example, I mentioned that I lived in an all-male dorm my freshman year, right? And I was out and I made friends with so many people who at the time, none of us knew that we were eventually going to be presidents and executive board members of these organizations and those organizations, but we were friends. So because we had the friendship, it was easy to also create those intersections for our different organizations because we had that base level of respect. And I think sometimes when we do the work of advocacy, we forget that respect is always paramount in order to get people to come to the table to have a conversation. We might not agree on whatever the topic may be, but that base level of respect is necessary to catalyze the connection, the integration, the capacity to even listen in the first place that makes real progress and change possible. And so I think as we look at what needs to happen going forward, it's in terms of what Chai said, it's remembering that you also have to be inclusive in order to be included. So think about other organizations' needs, right? Sometimes we can only approach things from what we need, and that leaves the other person who we may want something from at a disadvantage, or they might feel like they're being taken advantage of if everything is about what we need. So it's attaching the intersection of our needs to their needs. That's what is the sweet spot that makes it a, part of my English, a hell yes to do anything together, right? So I think that's what we really need to do to move forward, the base level of respect, and also finding where our needs intersect the needs of other groups and other organizations.
Absolutely. And this is why you are a gay love coach, matchmaker, and hypnotherapist.
Okay. Currently hosting a singles retreat in Puerto Rico.
Oh, okay. Well, and so Laten and Lacey, I want to give you all the opportunity to answer that as well before we move on to the next question, if you have anything to add.
Sure. Yeah. So I think, when I think about the work that's been done in Cascade recently, I definitely think of kind of the 3-4 years in total. Just looking back, one thing that I think is really exciting that doesn't really have anything to do with what Cascade has done is just how students coming in now are so much more aware of themselves and accepting of others that it's actually crazy to see how much kind of the culture around being LGBT and Black has changed so much in only 4 or 5 years. Coming in, I definitely remember, I was going to be out, but there was kind of a sense of like, you're only going to be so out, like you have your friends, your community, but the idea of talking about it in class was kind of, it depended on the situation. And, most people were flying a little under the radar in some senses, but I feel like now the students I've been able to meet just through leadership have been so much more open and comfortable with themselves, which is really great to see. I think that's really the main hope for me in all the work I've done, was just kind of wanting students to have that security in themselves and that ability to accept themselves, because I think one thing that we do struggle with is that acceptance of self over anything, because it's going to be really hard to go through life being different while still struggling to accept ourselves. And it's a journey for sure. It's not something that's ever fully complete. And I think we all struggle with it in different ways. But that was really great to see. So I think in terms of my own leadership and things that have changed through Cascade in the past few years, for me, I think even being president and doing this and that, for me, I always think back to my time as historian, because I think for me, that was just so impactful for so many reasons. And being able to build out this little archive of documents and newspaper clippings, basically detailing the history of Cascade. So much of what I've heard today, I've learned already through the, Cascade, the Lambda Student Alliance, Lagosa, Oshala. They've all been in the news for years and years. And, we were discussing a little bit before the meeting about really having dedicated archives about LGBT students at Howard. And I think that is something that I think is so important, because acknowledging that we exist is, I think, still a huge hurdle in the university. And not so long ago, even, my freshman, sophomore years, there wasn't really that acknowledgement even, so I think for me, that's always what I come back to, is just learning about where we come from and how it's so important to keep front of mind. And I think, even in learning about old events and reviving old events like the gay tour is one that we got to do this year again. And that's definitely one that's kind of been passed down. But I think it's so important to learn from our past, and of course to innovate, and of course to go further than we could before, but also to look at how far people had already gone before us.
Yeah, and that's the importance of this panel here. It's like how far we've come, how far we have to go.
Yeah.
So I definitely want to get Laten some time as well. I also know that Laten, you also led the conference, the As Black as I Am Queer conference this past semester, which we had a very, very monumental moment. So I want you to share your thoughts on what that, and then share with us what that monumental moment was.
Yes. So at this year's conference, it was the fourth annual conference, and the focus is really about transcendence. The third conference was about rebirth, and it was during the pandemic, so it was virtual. So for my first time doing it in person, I really wanted us to focus on how far we've come and how far we still have to go in terms of how we've transcended beyond discrimination at Howard University as a Black and queer community, and what that means when you live at the intersection of both being Black and queer. So at the end of the conference, we had a procession out to the flagpole and was able to raise the pride flag on the flagpole for the first time in Howard history, where it's still flying. So I am extremely proud of that accomplishment, and just that visible reminder that we're Black, we're queer, we're here, and that no one can silence us, no one's going to erase us. And I'm just really excited to continue that I guess, motto throughout this academic year, that we're here and you're going to see us whether you like it or not.
Awesome, awesome, absolutely. And I also want to make sure, I would be remiss if I didn't ask, what is it that that you love and what brings you joy about being Black and LGBTQ plus, just in general in your own lives, living your most authentic life? What does that mean to you? And this is a question for everyone and anyone who wants to jump right in.
Okay, I'll jump in. For me, one of my core life values is play. I feel like we are all going to be most engaging, most fascinating, most attractive when we're in a state of passionate play, when we're doing what lights us up, when we are, fully ourselves, that part of us that is unchanging since the time we were, birthed into the universe, that piece of us that is about joy. And what I love about being Black and gay is the way that we play is like nobody else. The wordplay is sickening, right? The things that we come up with, the ideas, the way that we share and commune with each other, that playful spirit that not only makes life worth living, but gets us through struggle, gets us through stress, helps us to stay the course in the face of adversity. That sense of play that we have is just, there's nothing like it. And yeah, like that's what really gets me going, gets me up, keeps me here. So it's the play for me.
Thank you, Amari. That was great. Anyone else?
I think that's so true. I'm so glad you brought that forward because there is nothing like when I get together with my queer brothers and sisters, and we do uplift each other and provide safety, fun, love, imagination, innovation. When we are all of that, I would not be a part of any other community because it would be boring compared to the community that I've come to be a part of and to love. So yes, the other thing I appreciate is the freedom of expression. I cannot imagine having to hold in such an important part of who I am. Not feeling like a whole person. Coming out was freeing for me, as well as my family, as well as my partners. It's just to be able to walk in the world as a whole human being is so essential to joy on this planet and fulfilling your purpose. That to me is one of the most important things about owning your identity. And I don't mean semantics. I mean really owning your inner being, your inner self.
Yeah, if I want to go ahead and follow up a question with you, Chai, and ask you, why was it so freeing coming out to family? Why is that so freeing and important?
Because it released them as well. We could then have conversations. I mean, I knew that I was. I really don't think my parents did, but when they found out, when they found out, they said, okay, my mom in particular, she said, okay, but don't flaunt it. And what did I do? I flaunted it. I started an organization, several organizations. But then we could talk about it. It freed them up to understand what barriers their daughter, who they love so much, was facing and what they were willing to do to help me break down those barriers. So that's the importance. It doesn't just free you to be who you are. I think it also, if people love you and care about you, gives them permission to enter into a space with you, a very sacred space.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Laten?
Wow. I just love all of that. And I just find that extremely powerful. And when you talked about freedom of expression, for me, I find joy in the confidence that comes with that. And you talk about being a whole person, just walking around, just being your true self, your whole self. I don't know. I think that's my favorite aspect. Just that confidence. I know I have a little bit of arrogance at times, but just being able to walk into any space and just show up and just, I don't know, and not ask for permission, not asking for acceptance, but rather demanding it because you're just so proud in who you are that when you walk into a space, everybody feels it.
Absolutely.
Can I just say something on that piece right quick?
Absolutely.
You mentioned not asking for acceptance, but demanding it. And I don't want anybody to not know that the reason that these organizations exist, especially CASCADE, is because there is no asking to be accepted. There is no asking to be yourself. You are, and that's already enough. And what anybody else has to say about it is not your business. Live your life, right? And a lot of times we come into situations where we feel like we have to prove ourselves, where we feel like we have to be perfect enough, where we feel like we have a long way to go before we can just be, before we can just breathe. And all of that is not true. All of that is a trauma response, right? That's not actually what is required. So step into the space as you are, okay? And there's this quote that I often say, it came to me one day at the beach. Right? I asked the sun for its wisdom and it replied, never dim your light, let them squint. And that's all I have to say about that.
I love that. And Lacey, brings you joy and.
Sure, yeah, I think hearing all of your perspectives has definitely been so insightful. And I think for me, the direction I come at it from is kind of thinking about the unique perspective that I think this life has given me. I think that, we've touched on it. I think we're like no other group. I think we think uniquely, we act uniquely, we form our communities uniquely. I think that, just everything from the way that I think, the way I dress, the way I act is so shaped by my identities. And I wouldn't want it any other way. I can't imagine. I don't know what I would be like. I don't know what my life would have been like. I don't know the kind of person I would be. And I feel like it's given me so much compassion, perspective, and just the ability to kind of, to be able to adapt easily and just to learn. I think coming from it, kind of from like the nerdy academic perspective within me, even thinking about when I was working on my senior thesis, I think one thing that I kept in mind was about how what we do couldn't have been done by anyone else. The perspective we bring to the table, I think, is so singular, but so different between each of us as well. Generations, our identities, geography, so many things, but just that sense of uniqueness and particularness that I wouldn't ever want to be taken away from me. And I think I would have never been able to tap into without these aspects of my identity coming together.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I want to go back to Amari. Amari, you are the president of the HU Rainbow Alumni Association. Talk to us a little bit about what the importance is of being involved in the HU Alumni, the Rainbow Alumni Association, and then talk to us a little bit about the Lavender reception as well.
Yeah, sure. So first things first, if you are an LGBTQ plus student at Howard, once you graduate, you are automatically a member of the Rainbow Alumni Association. Okay, no dues are required, none of that. Like, you're automatically a member. And so the importance of this organization, which was just founded in the last few years, right? Like, this is totally new for the university. And they specifically asked me to come and do this because of the success that CASCADE has had. So the importance of this organization is to create that sustainable community, not just once we leave Howard, but when you think about previous generations of students who are now alumni that didn't necessarily have that experience, that may have forgotten or never felt like, comfortable at Howard. It's to remind you that Howard is always home. Okay, always. And we are always here for you. And the purpose of this organization, in addition to creating that safe space, that engagement among the LGBTQ plus alumni, is also around being a beacon, a lighthouse, if you will, for new students who are interested in Howard as well. So we are essentially brand ambassadors for the university in terms of its LGBTQ community and population. So the being involved is a way for you to ensure that the university is held accountable consistently, okay, to continue the work that it's been doing and to continue to grow and be a safe space for all of its students. The Lavender reception happens every year around homecoming, and this is when we actually award the Lavender Scholarship, which is specifically for students who are matriculating through Howard who are a part of the LGBT community. And that's also new, which it was started about, I think, 5 or 6 years ago. So both of these are relatively new functions of the university, but obviously we all agree that they should have been here since the inception. But it's here now, it's happening, and there's no reason for you to feel like you can't stay connected to this space, because again, Howard is always home. You always have a place here, and there's always room for you to continue to make a difference beyond the classroom. So show up, come through, hit us up. We got you, we here, we love you, we're always gonna be family. So that's that. And if you have a couple coins or more than a couple coins, we have the scholarship. Yes. Feel free to donate. This is your home too. This is your family too. And we are all responsible for the continued success and thriving of our house, our home, our family.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you for that. And the Lavender reception is going to be an official homecoming event on the Thursday of homecoming. So we are going to do it big, we are going to do it right, and we want everyone to be able to come by, all of our current and past LGBTQ plus Bison, come and join us. And my last question, obviously there's been so much that has been going out from HU Communications and the university, and our own President Frederick sent out a message, and I quote, as we advocate for change in the world at large, we cannot overlook the conditions within our own homes. this Pride Month, as we continue to advocate for the LGBTQ plus community in society, we will also do more to make Howard more inclusive, representative, and tolerant. What does that mean to you?
I would say that I would really like to see it. I would really like to see them put, words are one thing, but to lead by example, I think is one thing that Howard has been challenged to do in the past, being such a visible HBCU. People who don't know anything about HBCUs probably know about Howard. And I think that, to kind of stand up to that charge as leaders, they really do need to put that action, into work, with the Resource Center beginning and, finally having some sort of a place for students to, to look to and, students, people who are considering coming to Howard. I think it's just so important to make sure that they are standing up to, like you said, Mr. Cadiz, with Howard being ranked so highly as far as LGBT acceptance. It's about really standing up to what that means and really asking students, asking staff and faculty what they need and giving it to them and not asking them to prove it, not asking for the data, for the numbers. We can only do so much. And, we shouldn't have to prove that we're suffering to be heard and to be listened to. And I think that Howard can do it. It's just a matter of doing it without having to be pressured into it.
Any other?
I totally agree with that. And the thing that I have enjoyed about President Frederick is that he has put his money where his mouth is, right? He is personally given to the Lavender Scholarship. We have the LGBT Resource Center. We got a flagpole. Like, all these things have changed since he's been in office. And there's always two sides of this shit should have already been done and happening, but also change takes time. And so in my own impatience, sometimes I'm like, there's not enough yet. But I also have to recognize that when you come into an ecosystem that already has its ways, its systems, its structures, you also have to be astute enough to recognize priority and also how to navigate the system to get what you want, right? And so, in other words, what I'm saying is, whoever the next president happens to be, whoever the individual people and individual roles within the university are, we have to remember that we still live in a world that is only just now recognizing who we are in those greater spaces, right? Like, we could only just get married in the last, several years, right? Like, when you think about the context in which the university exists, the context of the state of the Black community in this country, that designation as the most thriving LGBT organization on an HBCU campus, or the most gay-friendly campus among HBCUs, is relative. It is nowhere near where it needs to be, but considering what we've had to come through to get here, like, I am hella proud of that designation, because other campuses, other schools don't have the Resource Center, don't have the organizations that have either existed in the number that we've had or for the length of time. Like, 2000 is when Blagosa started, and we've had an organization consistently every single year representing LGBT students for the last 22 years. That is huge, right? So I'm not taking away from the fact that we still got a whole lot of stuff that needs to happen, and it needs to happen quickly, because we deserve everything that we desire. But also, like, look how far we've come. We don't want to forget to celebrate progress, because we haven't gotten to perfection yet. And we can do two things at the same time. We can hold people to their word and be at people's necks when they don't give us what we need. And we can also party and celebrate all the things, right? And that's also one of the things that's very unique about the Howard culture, right? We are able to party, play, and get these 4.0s and these grades at the same time in a way that nobody else does it.
That is
okay?
correct. Absolutely.
Nobody does it the way that we do. And we have to remember that as long as we have that desire, that dedication, and the ability to organize and to use what we got to get what we want, we will always get it.
Absolutely.
Always.
Absolutely.
It's inevitable as long as we stay the
Exactly. And as we are closing out this roundtable discussion, I want to thank you all, our panelists, Amari, Laten, Chai, and Lacey. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you all. I want to also thank you to all the behind the scenes individuals, the people that put this together, Denise Johnson, and also Tamia Webster with the Division of Alumni Relations. Thank you so much for that. There is in the chat a link to the Lavender Fund Foundation where you can donate. Please, 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 it's advantageous for us to pour back into our LGBTQ plus community on Howard's campus. Far too often we see individual students, especially our LGBTQ plus students, come out to their families and are cut off in many, many ways. So we want to make sure that we support our LGBTQ plus students, stay at Howard, exceed the expectations of Howard, and then graduate and move on to bigger and amazing, amazing things that you have seen here today. So this is just the first of many panels. Please look out for any correspondence from the Intercultural Affairs and LGBTQ plus Resource Center. There's quite a bit of information on the horizon for what's to come, for our alum to come back and play and party and also do some trainings and dialogues with us as well. Continue to be change agents, continue to be advocates, continue to be individuals that share love and that lead with love and an open heart and empathy. We all need it. Our community needs it. Our world needs it. And our Black, queer, specifically our HBCU Bison LGBTQ plus community needs it. So thank you all. Please look out for any other roundtables and all other dialogues. So with that said, have a great, great rest of your day.
Thank you so much.